Hello everyone and welcome. In this video I'm going to talk about unit testing in Python, so let's get into it. So unit testing basically allows you to test your code and find bugs quickly. And the reason it's called unit testing is because what you're going to be testing is one unit of code at a time. So for example, a function, a loop, a variable, etc. So I have this function right here called add. It's basically going to take in two numbers, add them together, and then it's going to return that sum. Now I want to test this function, so I want to know if this function is producing the correct output. Now the way I do this without unit testing is I would print a call of this function. So let me do that and run this. So this is going to print 7. So as you can see, everything is working correctly, or so it appears, because this isn't optimal at all. And the reason for that is that if you add something to your program, so if you add a function or a class to your program, and this function out of the blue just starts giving you weird output, then you won't know what's going on just from a simple print statement like this. You won't know what is right, what is failing, what you need to fix, etc. And that's the important part, and that's where unit testing comes in. Now, before I show you how you can implement unit testing into your programs, let me just show you the assert keyword. So I'm going to define a function which is going to be a test for my add function. So I'm going to say def and then tests underscore add. So the naming convention for this is you're going to name this test underscore and then whatever you're testing. In this case, I'm testing the add function, so I'm going to name this test underscore add. And then I'm going to set result equal to add with the arguments 2 and 5. And then I want to assert, so I want to check whether the result is equal to 7. And then if it's not, I'm going to print this f string that says expected result to be 7, not, and then whatever the result is. Result, like so. So let me print a call of this function. So let me say print tests add, like so. And now if I run this, you can see that this is going to print none. And this is because all tests are passed, right? Result is indeed equal to 7. Now what happens if I change this to 3? So if I change that, then it's going to say assertion error, expected result to be 7, not 8. So that's how the assert keyword works. And you're actually going to use this with unit testing. So let me show you how you can do that. So the first thing to do is to import unit test. So I'm going to say import unit test, like so. This is a built-in module, you don't have to install anything. And now I'm going to create a class which is going to be called test sum. So the naming convention for this is the same. You're going to name this class test and then whatever you're testing. In this case, I'm going to say test sum, which is the name of my script. And then each method inside of this class is going to be testing a different piece of data. And this is going to inherit from unit tests dot test case, like so. And I'm going to define the first test, which is going to be a test for the add function. So I'm going to say test underscore add. And in this case, you're actually obligated to name this test underscore add, because if you don't begin with the word test, then the program is just going to ignore this as a test, because the unit test module actually requires for you to name your test and then whatever you want. So that's very important. And now in here, I'm going to say result equals add 2 and 6. And then I'm going to say self dot assert equal. So in this case, I'm actually going to use assert equal and not just the assert. And each of these methods are like variations of the assert keyword. So just to name some for you, you have assert equal, which takes in two values and verifies if they're equal, which is what I'm using right now. And then you have assert in, which takes in two values and verifies if the first is contained in the second. Assert true checks whether one value is equal to true or not. Assert less takes in two values and verifies if the first is smaller than the second. And then you have a bunch more of, like assert almost equal, assert raises, assert warns, etc. So I'm going to use assert equal, and I'm going to assert if the result is equal, result like that is equal to 8. And then if it's not, I'm going to say expected, results to be 8, not, and then the result, like so. So now let me print, so I'm going to print test sum dot test underscore add, like so. And now if I run this, you can see that this is going to say none because everything is working correctly. All the tests are passed. If I change this from 2 to 3 and I run this, you can see that this is going to give me assertion error. It's going to say 9 is different from 8, and then it's going to say expected results to be 8, not 9. Okay, so that's the basics of how unit testing works. Now, you might be thinking, well, this isn't much different from the print statement that we used previously, right? Because this isn't giving me much information. It's just giving me the assertion error and the traceback, and that's all, right? It isn't really giving me any useful information that I can use to figure out what's wrong and how to fix it. And the reason for that is that the test isn't actually running, or, well, actually, let me rephrase that. The test is running, but it is just not running in our terminal. So if you want the test to appear, if you want to get some useful information that you can actually work with to try to figure out what you have to change to not have this error anymore, I'm going to delete this print statement, and I'm going to say if double underscore name double underscore equals double underscore main double underscore, then I want to call unit test dot main, like so. And now if I run this, you can see that the test is actually running. So let's try to break this down. So first of all, it's going to give me an F because, well, our test failed. And then it's going to say fail, and it's going to tell me exactly where the test failed. And then it's going to give me a traceback with the assertion error. And then it's going to say ran one test in 0.001 seconds. And then it's going to say failed. So that you can understand this a little bit better, let me create another function called mul. This is going to take in two numbers. It is going to multiply them together, and then it's going to return that result. So mul, like that. Now let me create a test for this function. Let me just copy this because we're going to be doing the same thing. And now let me say define test mul, like so. This is going to take in self. And here I'm going to define results is equal to mul, and then the arguments are going to be 2 and 5, and then I'm just going to paste that message right there. And then let me say 10 and 10 here as well. So now if I run that, let me run that. It's going to say, okay, ran 2 tests in 0.001 seconds, failures 1. And up here, let me just pull this up, it's going to give me an F and a dot. It's going to give me an F because the first test failed, and a dot because the second test was successful. So when a test fails, it's going to give you an F. When it is successful, it's going to give you a dot. And down here is going to say fail, and it's going to say exactly what is failing. So that's why it is useful. And it's also going to give you the traceback for the error. So the last thing I want to show you is the setup and teardown methods. The setup method is called before every test, and the teardown method is called after every test. And both of these methods are mechanisms that assure that your tests are being done properly. So let me add up here the setup. And this actually has to be written like this in camel case. Let me just print \n setup, like so. And then down here, I'm going to define my teardown. So let me say define teardown. This is going to take in self as well. And in here, I'm just going to print done, like so. And so that we don't lose track of where we are, let me just add a few print statements here. So let me print test1. And in here, let me print test2. Let me just add the quotation marks. Okay, so let me run this to show you what it looks like. So as you can see, if I pull this up, this is going to say setup, and then it's going to say test1, and then it's going to say done. And then it's going to give me an F because this test failed. And then it's going to do the same thing for the second test, and it's going to give me a dot because my test was successful. So this isn't really doing much right now because I've just added some simple print statements inside of these methods, but these are actually pretty useful. For example, if you have a function that requires for you to open a certain file, you can open that file inside of your setup method, and then you can close it inside of your tearDown method. And in that way, you don't have to waste resources keeping the file open after you're done with your tests. Now, if you want these methods to run before all of your tests and after all of your tests instead of just before and after each test, you can also do this by changing these three things. First, you have to add a class method decorator to the top of your teardown and setup methods. You're going to add class to the name. So instead of just teardown, you're going to say teardown class. And then you're going to say CLS instead of self. And let me do this in the setup as well. So let me say class method like so. Let me add class and let me add CLS. Now, if you want to know more about how decorators and class methods work, I have videos on both of these, so you can watch those. And let me run this to show you what it looks like. So let me pull this up. And as you can see, it's going to run the setup method in the beginning, then it's going to run test1, failed, test1, succeeded, and then it's going to run the teardown method. And I think that's all that I have to show you. Just a few things. Remember that you have to write the name of these methods like this because the unit test actually recognizes these names and knows that this is going to be a setup class method and the teardown class method. And you have to begin the name of each test with the keyword test so that the unit test module knows that it's a test. Because if you don't do that, then that test is just going to be ignored and it's not going to run. Okay, so that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, if this was helpful and valuable to you, please like and subscribe to help support the channel. If there's anything that you want me to make a video about, then you can just ask me about it in the comments and I'll make it for sure. And I'll see you in the next video.